Thank you for joining this virtual coffee, this legislative coffee presented by the League of Women Voters, the Bonner Springs NAACP, and the Bonner Springs City Library. I'm Jack Granith with the library and the NAACP. This morning, we'll hear from at least one of our legislators, Tim Johnson. We're hoping that Melissa Oropeza will join us. Please note that all of the Wyandotte County legislators were invited to participate. I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items before we begin. This is an educational, nonpartisan event for the general public. If we do have more than one legislator, then each will have a 3-minute opening statement and 3 minutes to each to answer the questions during the question and answer period. We'll provide a countdown of time remaining at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and at time. If we have only the one legislator, we are not going to be very particular about the time. The partner organizations co-sponsoring this forum believe that democracy works best when citizens are informed and active. We hope this this legislative coffee provides you the opportunity to learn more about your legislators and what is happening in the State House. And now I'd like to welcome our moderator, Teresa Bolton.
Thank you, Zach. I'm excited to be here today and listen to our legislator. Hopefully, like he said, another one will come, and we'll begin our legislator speaking. Right now, you don't have a time limit on that, since did you?
Are you sure?
Our representative Timothy Johnson, and just thank you today and welcome. And go ahead and tell us about yourself.
It is nice to be here in Bonner Springs. Now, I do not show officially as a Bonner Springs representative, but I have part of your school district because it extends into Leavenworth County. My district starts at the county line and goes north all the way up. But I grew up in Wyandotte County, and I have wonderful associations with Bonner Springs. Spent many years with the Wyandotte County Sheriff's Office, and I know a lot of the history out here in Bonner Springs and Edwardsville, and I started, I could remember patrolling when the Sheriff's Office still had the area that you would eventually annex out along all the way to the county line and other places. And so it's near and dear to me. I was also very fortunate in 1970, how old I am, to leave high school, and I was with David James. We were the 2 football players that were recruited out of Wyandotte County to go to the University of Kansas and play football. And it was an awesome, David was an incredible athlete. And so I had that opportunity back in the day, back when, well, I guess KU is better now. So I went into law enforcement 31 years after that, and I finished up, been the chief of police, finished up as a child abuse investigator for the state. It was one of the most challenging jobs I have ever had. And that's kind of what sticks in my heart. At some point I burned out, and I went into teaching. I went back and got another degree, and I taught school, high school at Wyandotte High School, my alma mater, and then I moved out to Basehor-Linwood to be with my sons. And I live just across the line in Leavenworth County, about K7 and Leavenworth, Mitchell Court, Ma Bell's area. There's a little lake back there. It's just gorgeous. I love that little place. And I ran for office and was elected 3 years ago, and finishing up my 4th year. Serving on child welfare, foster care adoption, homeless committee, the K through 12 budget committee. And this year is a challenge. There's a lot we need to know both ways. By the way, in Wyandotte County, when I worked here, I was a Democrat. In Leavenworth County, I'm a Republican. So I'm about as bipartisan as you're going to get. That's who I am. But it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll begin with our questions. Okay, our first question is, what do you do to stay connected to the community in which you represent?
Okay, first off, every Friday, In the House of Representatives, what they do is pro forma. So the House meets officially, but no roll is taken, no official business can be taken. They just use it to read up minutes, and 95% of all the legislature just goes home on Thursday evenings because many of them have businesses, etc. On Fridays, I start my day at Perky's Cafe, 155th, and I'm just telling you folks, that's where I could sit down there, and the local guys that have their coffee, I talk to them. People are welcome to come in and see me most mornings. And then I make a list of people or businesses that need to talk to me. So yesterday I spent almost an entire day with Child Care Aware Kansas, which is one of the prime groups for fixing and working with child care issues. They talked to me about issues. They took me to a couple daycares. We discussed those issues. I went to the Leavenworth County Commissioners and talked about a bill they had requested. So I spent the day. The week before, I was out at the Piper schools, and that's one of the areas that I represent. Other Fridays, I've been in Linwood Elementary, where I have 3 grandchildren. So I try to go out 2 places. I try to meet all of the town halls that I can. If you call me, I'm slow to respond because I'm in Topeka. It's hard to reach me there. When you get home, it's usually 7 at night. I will call you back. If you email me, I will get back within a day. I need to know what my people want, and I need to vote my district, which can cause conflict at occasion because sometimes partisan issues are very clear. But that's how I try to stay in touch. And one of my other coffee spots is right down here on Main Street. I shouldn't say names because that would be like
on Front Street.
On Front Street there. In fact, I often meet there with your official representative, Mike Thompson, not the weatherman. There she is.
I'm so sorry.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. Good morning.
I appreciate it. They let me talk for like.
Oh no, what did he say?
It's all yours. Yeah.
Well, okay.
Well, hello.
Hello, good morning.
I'm Teresa Bolton. So you are Representative Melissa Oropeza?
Yes.
Did I pronounce your name correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So since you're just joining, we've already answered one question. If you want to take a moment to tell us about yourself first, since you're just getting here.
Sorry, I apologize for my lateness. So I am House Representative Dr. Melissa Oropeza, and I represent the 37th District in Wyandotte County. Armadale, 1 Street in Argentina, a portion of Turner, then go all the way out to 94th and State. I sit on the Elections Committee, Health and Human Services, and Legislative Modernization. And this is my first term, second session. And my background is that I'm a practicing nurse practitioner, and I continue to work even if I'm at the Capitol. I do telehealth.
Thank you. So since we have 2 now, we're gonna put a 3-minute time limit on it. So I will ask the question that we just asked Mr. Johnson, and he just answered this question. What do you do to stay connected to the community in which you represent?
So for me, I attend the Democratic breakfasts. I have a list of activists in Wyandotte County that I keep updated on certain topics that are important to them. So I email a lot. I do social media. I met when they come to the Capitol. I make sure that if people are coming from Wyandotte County, that I am there to meet with the groups and talk to them about their specifically what they're meeting for. Pretty much that's about all. I try to do as much as I possibly can. And then coming to legislative coffees like this.
Okay, so our next question for both of you is, why is Kansas one of the only 10 to 11 states that still tax Social Security?
Didn't happen on my shift. There's been a movement. The legislative bills that I have seen in my 3 years, that wasn't acceptable, and I'm not sure why. I do know I have personally spoken that I've had a couple of bills that I co-signed. I didn't start them, please. But I'm in favor of, I'm 71 now, and taxing my Social Security and my one pension from Capers. I'm not living a high life, but I can't answer why that hasn't been done, but I would support taking it off.
First term, second session, so I too am very new, but I personally wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, our community here in the state of Kansas, if you look at the Kansas Health Institute statistics, we are becoming an older generation here in the state of Kansas. I think it's imperative that we do support the older population and try to keep people here in the state of Kansas and not export everybody out to other states who have that wonderful benefit. I too would support something along those lines as well, in order to keep people here in our state and in our community and keep it thriving and going forward.
Okay, so our next question is, should Kansas Republican legislators again fail to override the governor's veto of your 6% regressive flat tax plan, will you please negotiate with the governor to get a tax relief deal brokered that doesn't include the flat tax? That's the first part of the question. And then we Kansas taxpayers should not have our Social Security income tax and pay food sales tax when Kansas revenue gained from taxing our Social Security checks is raining money into the state treasury like manna from heaven. And then the communists give us a tax break, particularly triumphant over political ideology. And so the question is, will you please negotiate with the governor to get a tax relief deal broker that doesn't include the flat tax?
Well, clearly I voted for the bill that was produced by the Republican majority. I passed by a strong majority and then was vetoed. The vote is scheduled for Tuesday morning. It was scheduled for last Tuesday, but the Republicans were missing, I think, 3 votes that they felt they needed, so carried it over. We'll know Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock, assuming that people show up. I don't know if it's going to override. It's probably set on 1 vote in the Senate, 1 vote either way in the Senate. And I'm not privy to any of the information on how that's going. I do know that the House will probably override it, just given the numbers that I've seen in my Republican caucus, just sheer numbers. If it doesn't pass here, the one thing I will say, I think it's going to destroy the rest of the session. I think we're going to get into a political knockdown, drag out, and then other legislation that's necessary is just going to get avoided. I think there will be retribution from both sides, just because that's the way the political fixture works. I have a couple bills that probably would get vetoed if we override it. I don't know. I'm thankful that I've got a call. I get to meet with one of the governor's staff on Monday on child care issues. I hope we can negotiate. I personally will not be part of that because I'm not far enough up the chain of command. I mean, that's the fact. I mean, the House leadership, et cetera. So as far as me negotiating, it's not going to happen. But I would love for us to settle this peacefully, strongly support the no food sales tax. I want that. I'd love to see that start on April 1st. I guess that's where I'm at.
Okay, and so in regards to the veto, obviously from a Democratic standpoint, we'll definitely try to sustain the veto and then hopefully get some people who can see it financially for what it is and how it does so little for the middle class. In addition to that, I think there's already political theatrics going on. There are definitely bills that are not being heard because they were introduced by Democrats, and this is being used as a ploy to things not getting done, unfortunately. Again, second session, first term, I see a lot of things that are good for Kansas that just aren't worked for whatever reason. Again, not high in leadership like Representative Johnson. But at the same time, there's just a lot of good things that are wonderful for the state that are just not being done. Wonderful bills on all levels, on everywhere, that should not be used as political pawns. I think things will definitely get tough if things are, regardless of which way it goes. I think things will definitely make a change and a turn. Now, what that ultimately means, I have no idea. But just looking at the tea leaves, it could be very interesting, and you'll see a lot less work being done for the citizens of Kansas. Does that answer your question completely? Okay.
Well, these are.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Questions completely. If you need me to specify or get into more details, so please let me know.
Yeah, or just write it down, and we'll, if we have time, we'll get back to that question. Okay. So this follow-up is, why did you vote for the flat tax when it has been shown flat? It only benefits the rich and hurts middle income and low income Kansans. This is for Tim.
Okay, I would disagree respectfully that it hurts, only serves the rich and doesn't do all those things. It is not a perfect tax bill. I'm not arguing that point, but I disagree in the numbers that I have seen and had a chance to study. It clearly was a solid bill that would reflect to the best of people in my district area. And that's one reason that I supported it. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But there were some things in there, especially like food sales tax coming off April 1, and some of the other issues. The flat tax issue probably is the sticking point. But I did support it. I clearly will support a veto override. That's my personal belief. And people, as I have sampled them in my district, they support that.
Okay. Our next question is, what is your stance thinking about Medicaid expansion in Kansas? That's for both of you.
I would completely support the expansion of Medicaid. The numbers that I've seen, the data that I've researched, does reflect it help about 7,500 people in Wyandotte County alone. And these are the working poor who unfortunately don't always have an option to insurance. And then when they do have an option to insurance, it is, I can tell you personally what I paid for a family. It's $250 every 2 weeks that comes out of my check. So you can imagine an insurance rate of somebody who only makes $10 an hour or $7.25 an hour, like the extreme cost of having that come out of your daily check and barely having enough left to do anything else. So again, with the expansion of Medicaid, it would open that up to the working poor who just don't have that option to carry those types of insurance, and then not making enough at an income level that would be sustainable with life and food and rent and everything else that, goes along with driving to work, insurance, and all of those things. So I think it's really a numbers game, and the fact that we've had so much money that we've missed out on in the state of Kansas is unbelievable. I think we're into the billions now. So it's just amazing of how much the topic is being used as a political standpoint and a hard no, when we've missed out on just so much as a state that we could have used, and it's going to other states and elsewhere other than the state of Kansas.
I will not vote for Medicaid expansion this year. I have spent extensive time with Senator Beverly Gossage, who is an extraordinarily well-versed individual in insurance issues. That is her specialty. She is in the district just south of here. I used to represent when I had part of Johnson County. The numbers that I see on paper from her and from those who understand all of the insurance business. This does not provide the benefits to all of the people that it seems to. And it does put a large number of able-bodied working adults who could work and obtain insurance on for free or on a very reduced cost without benefiting those other people. Who's going to pay for it? The middle class and the lower class working person. It has to come from somewhere. And I am deeply committed to tax reduction in the state of Kansas this year. So philosophically, I disagree with her, but I respect her opinion, especially because of her medical background. But the truth of the matter is it's not coming up. You can talk about it all you want, but it's been made very clear from leadership. And when I say leadership, the House Speaker, the House Majority Leader, Speaker Pro Tem, they control what bills can come up. And this is what she was referring to. There's some things that aren't getting worked. It's not coming up. That's what we've been told. That's fact. So in that regard, I'm not looking for a battle on it. They're simply not going to let it happen. But we can talk about it. Whether that's fair or not, not my decision. But that's where I'm at.
Okay. All right, our next question is, we're surrounded by states that have approved medical and or recreational marijuana. What can you do about getting Kansas to move on this?
You go first.
Sure.
I support medical marijuana. Studies have shown treated as a medical commodity, it is helpful. I have two sons that have served multiple tours, for one of them combat injured. We know that it is beneficial for PTSD. My wife gave me some kind of salve or something for my knees and it took away the pain. I'm just telling you some of these components. If it's treated as a medicine and properly prescribed and given out, we should have it. We know for a fact that in people with serious cancer, hospice type issues that are unable to gain weight because of the chemotherapies and et cetera, that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that it does increase appetite.
Yes.
Appetite. Why would we not give everything we've got to those people? I have voted for it twice, for medical marijuana, and I will do so again. I am not for recreational marijuana, and I will not vote for it. As a law enforcement officer, I started as a drug enforcement person undercover. I have seen too much misery with drugs, especially now with fentanyl. I just can't support recreationally. I think it's one more issue, but I would believe in probably a little more deregulation. An example, Lenexa, Kansas. It's a misdemeanor. You can issue them a citation like for a DUI. We don't need to clog up the courts with possession type charges. So I would reducing some of the penalties. I mean, I'm not, somebody that is smoked some marijuana is not at the top of my criminal list. So I would support actions in that regard on it. Did a video back when I was still in police work, drugs, a dead end road. I remember coming out here at Bonner High School and with Harvey Jetta, the guitarist from Black Oak, Arkansas, and talking about drugs and the issues. And I've had personal family issues, and marijuana can be very debilitating to people. So that's part of my reason on that. So, thank you.
You want me to read it in?
Yeah. Yes, please.
We're surrounded by states that have approved medical and or recreational marijuana. What can you do about getting Kansas to move on this?
In regards to, I have never seen a bill on marijuana in general, and looking at it, unfortunately, I am not up to speed as to what the bill that Representative Johnson voted on or what it even looked like. So for me personally, I would like to see what would come forward. But I am in complete support of medicinal marijuana. It does help patients. We know it does help lots of diagnoses and or chronic conditions. But to actually see something along those lines, from what I understand, again, won't be heard, won't even have a hearing, won't be even thought of this session. Again, I'm not on the in crowd, but from what I understand, I don't believe it's going to be heard or even a bill brought forward or a hearing in regards to that. I believe you can find a lot of differencing opinions, but then that's where comes compromise of what we need to do for the state of Kansas and what's right for us. And especially from an economical standpoint, I think there needs to be some regulations. So with the fentanyl issues, making sure that when people are using something like marijuana, that it's safe and not being dosed with fentanyl. And having dispensaries does do that for the states and some of more of a safe aspect for people, regardless of how it's used for medical or recreational, but it could definitely be more of a safe patient safety, person safety issue, especially given all of the fentanyl issues that are currently arising throughout the United States.
Could I use 30 seconds? Sure. Sure. Economically, there are businesses that Wyandotte County and Leavenworth County would benefit from immediately with medical marijuana. They're prepared and somebody's got to take care of it. It's got to be done properly. They are ready to go into business right now within miles of where you live, which would bring money for a medical product. So I support it for that reason too. I mean, they're going to be paying the taxes. It's a medical component. I would love to see that. Secondly, the House has heard it twice. The Speaker simply said, we voted on it twice, we passed it twice, but the Senate will not. So why waste our time this year, me calling it up, we vote on it, and then it's it. So that's why it's not coming up in the House again this year.
Okay. And if you all need some more. Okay, our next question is, how can you help better support the adult mentally ill and their families?
Sorry, I was thinking about. So there is a social worker compact bill that is coming forward. I think that will help tremendously. I think if we can get some of these compacts to where we can get the mental health providers. And the compacts work in a great respect to where you don't physically have to live in the state of Kansas, but once you're in a compact, you can do a telehealth now that that's more widely known. We can have providers not necessarily have to leave the state of Kansas if they need to, and then they can stay here and still have their licensure here and then provide more services. So these types of compact bills will just open it up more to having providers available for the mental health patients as well as their family and caregivers. And like I said, there's a lot of great bills out there that just weren't worked last year, even given a hearing, but then just never brought to the floor. I heard a few in Health and Human Services. Unfortunately, I'm drawing a blank, but I thought, oh, well, this is great. Can we get this done? Never heard it on the floor. So I'm not exactly sure what the drawback is to that, or what the reasoning was to not hearing these wonderful bills on the floor were, but there were a lot of great bills I heard last year, and I thought that would be wonderful, especially for mental health, for healthcare in general, that just were never worked on the floor, never given that vote to potentially even go over to the Senate and see if they could come with something for the state. But yeah, I think there's a lot of great ideas out there, and the one I know that's coming up more recently, and then we did pass the one for the counselors last year, which I think is tremendous. And then, but for the social workers, it'll be tremendous in getting that compact started. We'd be in the beginning stages, which would be great. We'd have a seat at the table and making what the compact looks like, and being on that task, I think it's called a commission actually, of making those rules for the compact, which I think is great to be at the ground level and have a seat at the table when it's definitely forming, especially for the state of Kansas. So that way our needs are being met in the beginning.
Her comment about social workers is spot on. Since my 4th year, one of the issues is we don't have enough social workers, period, for a variety of schools. Our own social work, Department of Children and Family, we don't have them. It pays poor. Our schools haven't been producing them. We need to up the ante. We have started that. I will tell you that University of St. Mary in Leavenworth has a very good social work program that's being promoted now. But those kids are still, that's a 4-year degree. And we don't have the workers to do that. And we have to financially support them, or they're not going to be there for you in these counseling institutions. So I think we need to support them in academics to get them into the field. And it is a tough job. Mental health issues require some very special skills and a lot of time. So it's not a fast fix. And a lot of those people are asked to have a master's degree. That's 5 years of college by the time you're done with bachelor's and master's and your training. I think it's important. So I would support her ideas here because she's far in the no from me.
Okay. Our next question is, what actions are being taken to enable ineligible voters to exercise their right to vote? And then the comment is, drop boxes in early voting are essential to allow all eligible voters access to the polls. So the question is, what actions are being taken?
I'm going to defer. I'm not on the election committee, and I'm not quite sure what everything's been coming out, and it hasn't been heard on the floor yet.
Enable eligible voters. Everything that I've heard on the elections committee would not enable eligible voters. So we just heard a bill on Thursday that blew my mind, that if your mother, your friend, or somebody asked you to drop off their advanced ballot that they filled out themselves, you couldn't technically take it to the mailbox. You'd have to go all the way to the elections building. Then you'd have to take a picture with it. Then you'd have to show your driver's license. You have to show some kind of identification order to drop it off. So it's being dubbed the mugshot bill. So I can tell you everything that I have heard in elections is all about disenfranchising, making it as extremely hard as possible to vote. There is nothing that I have heard that will make it actually good. Oh, well, I take that back. There was one AI bill, but that has nothing to do with voters. So there was one AI bill about generating and making sure you know where these comments are coming from and what's being like truly putting, who's ever putting on these, whether it be a TV commercial, an ad, whatever have you, truly knowing who's doing that and knowing what's AI generated. But that is not helping the voters in any ways. It's just making sure they're informed. But I can tell you everything else I've heard in the elections committee is just about disenfranchising, making it as extremely hard as possible, for reasons I don't understand, because there's not been shown to be any fraud in the state of Kansas. We just had the Secretary of State's person come, Clay Barker, I'm sorry, I don't know his official title, I can't remember at this point anyways. And there's been nothing for the last since 1996. Like they looked back to see, like, is there a reason that we need to do these types of things? Is there something that's come up in the state of Kansas? And there's not been anything in the state of Kansas. Other states have had some issues. Again, when the person testified, not from the state of Kansas, from Texas, from a think tank, from a bill mill, however you want to put it. But nothing here in the state of Kansas, and we are constantly reassured of that from our election commissioners, and the president, who's the current president, Rick Pifo, as well as the state Secretary of State's office.
One reason I'm in this job right now is the League of Women Voters several years ago wanted to come over to Pacer Linwood High School, where I was a social studies teacher, and have an event just like this. I was not involved in politics. And my principal told me that I was in charge of it. And you know how that one will go, is, well, you know, you teach government. And so we hosted that up there at the Pacer Linwood High School, and my students did the questions. And they had to stand up and read them to the candidates. It was awesome. And they got an experience. Oh, by the way, you were in my government class and you showed up at the town hall, extra credit points. That worked. I found that we were able to get young kids voting, and I don't care where they vote, how they vote, but in my classes, in government classes, it's critical that you tell these 17, 18-year-olds, 17 about to be, you've got to vote. I was the first 18-year-old group to vote when that happened. I think we need to keep it in our schools, and I know the League of Women Voters is very active in getting our kids that way. That is awesome, because those young voters get started and then they talk at home. I think we need to be back in the schools, and that's a way to get eligible voters aware of how important it is. So I'd come out here and talk to your schools anytime.
Our next question is, this year there is a bill proposing to ban book bans and another to introduce a rating system for books in public school libraries. What is likely to come of all of this attention being paid to the libraries?
I'm not banning any books. I taught English for a few years. I think there are ways to monitor books. I think there are levels of books, maybe in grade schools, etc. That is our whole society. When they built the printing press, we were able to get the Bible. I mean, people read what they want to read, they get to interpret it. I don't know what's happening on the book ban stuff, and I'm not interested in knowing it. I think some things could be watched in schools. Pornography does not belong in our schools, but they're looking at it on their laptops and anyway, so I don't know.
I'm not familiar with this actual bill that was introduced either. It wasn't in my committees either. I find it very interesting that now we're going to be rating books. What's next? It's just opening a door to really, people talk of deregulation and getting the legislature, reducing that, making it easier for people to do things. But then at the same time, in the same breath, we're doing this. We're saying we want ratings on books. We want this, we want that. I believe it's going to be a lot more work. I don't know what the price tag would be. Is this going to be worked into the budget? Taxpayers, do you want to put the bill for this? I mean, I can't imagine this is a free process. And then who makes these decisions? Who's going to decide this for the state of Kansas or a public library? Who's going to decide what is okay and what's not okay? Who's going to make those decisions? I feel like that's a decision that you need to have with your family, for yourself, and that's your freedom to decide on whether you read something or not read something. And it sounds horribly very like a dictatorship of what's coming to pass. I mean, if we keep letting these things happen as a state of Kansas, unfortunately, I hate to see where we'll end up in the end. And in the same breath, I would like to make sure that when people are upset about these things, if you hear anybody who complains about this and doesn't vote, they need to vote. That is the way we know what you want from us. And you may not line up with me or Representative Johnson 110%, but at the same time, if there's some core value that you need to have spoken at the House, your House, please make sure you're using that vote and voting for that person that speaks for you. Thank you.
Okay, next question. How can we best support you to represent our views as your constituents?
My cards are here. Send me an email because that's good. Letters are, it's called snail mail now. Yeah, send me a letter. Phone calls, I'm more than glad to talk to people, but it's hard to get through. You know, you pay phone tag, et cetera, et cetera. Email, I sit down when I get home at 7:30, try to go through the day's emails. I try to get back by the next morning or so. That is one good way. And again, she said it pretty clearly. Don't have to always agree, but I will tell you where I'm at. Or if I'm going to go against the grain, if I say I'm voting for my district, that's because you did call me or you did send me something and I keep a file on it. And I can say, well, 75% of my district says they do not support this. Therefore, I will vote yes or I will vote no.
I do, emails are great and I have my cards here. Email's wonderful. Phone calls are a little bit hard. But if there's a specific advocacy day or you happen to be into the Capitol, I have no problem meeting with people or discussing the issues face to face. Works as well, but emails are great, especially constituents to know where they stand. I think at the same respect, I'm so much in the community that people come and tell me it's not a far run to say what my district wants or what my community needs. I would assume they would tell me the same if I wasn't doing right, which they have. So but again, it's a conversation. Again, we may not meet all the time 110%, but if we can at least talk about it and discuss each other's viewpoints and come to some decision, that'd be great. But yeah, email's fine, and I have my cards in any other way, social media, post, those types of things as well.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next question is, what would you say about this headline from today? Attorney General in Kansas sponsors bill adding hypoxia option for executing capital murderers.
Oh, okay.
I think so. Okay.
Haven't seen the headline. We haven't executed anybody in Kansas for forever and a day. I don't even think it's going to be an issue in Kansas. Local county attorney in Wyandotte County is never going to seek the death penalty. He didn't seek it for the gentleman who murdered 2 of our deputies in cold blood. I don't even think it's an issue. So we're not going to do it.
So what title is it?
Attorney General in Kansas sponsors bill adding hypoxia option for executing capital murderers.
So when I hear that title, I think it's to get clicks, to be honest. I have not heard anything about a death penalty bill coming up. I have not heard anything about repealing it. I have not heard anything about anything being worked. I think this is more of being on the front page of, I don't know, necessarily causing controversy, but having more prominence, to have something to talk about. Like Representative Johnson said, I have not seen anything. I've not talked to anybody. But again, I'm new, so it may come up. But as far as I know, nothing is coming as of this session anyways.
Okay. Would you support a reduction in the residential assessment rate from 11.5% to 9%?
I can't talk percentages because I'm not sure what they actually do. So when you ask the specific numbers there, we have to change the appraisal method of how your taxes are set or appraised for your homes. The like sales of homes is not fair. And the middle class and the lower class homes are being appraised at high levels based on simply higher selling homes. My home over here, that was just off 151st Street, was going up $30,000 a year because our nice little 60-year-old ranch home was being compared to some very expensive homes in Leavenworth County just down the road, just because that's what they sold for. We have to fix the appraisal system. And my idea would be that when you buy the home, that is its established value. And then we cap that amount at a percentage based on the cost of living. So if I buy this house for $200,000, that is my appraised value this year. Next year, the cost of living is 2.3. It can't go up more than 2.3. Because what happens now is the appraisal comes up so high, you're then taxed based on the mills that are set. Folks, then you're stuck. We have to fix that particular problem, and that will deal with at least your home property tax. And that's probably a critical issue because you're being asked to pay for our schools, and they're growing in this area, not as much as in Bonner, but clearly in Leavenworth County, Piper, they've got bond issues sitting up. So that's kind of my take.
Oh, yeah.
Would you support a reduction in the residential assessment rate from 11.5% to 9%?
Okay. I have to agree with Representative Thompson. I think we need to worry about what the mills are being used for and the percentage rates. I do agree with the assessment and evaluation of having a little more control on that and making a fresh look at that, as well as I would support the funding of LAVTR so that the counties can, so that hasn't been funded for over 20 years, and that's to help with reducing property taxes. To ensure that is funded as it should be funded, to help those property taxpayers pay something that's a little more affordable. And I believe there could be legislation to provide LAVTR funding to reduce property taxes that can be very concrete in what the counties do with that money. I know there's always arguments that, well, we're going to give them this money and they're not going to use it for property taxes. I feel as 125 that sit in the House, we can definitely come up with language and the revisers that will ensure the counties do what they are supposed to do with that money. I don't feel like that should be an argument. We just have to set it in policy and make it happen.
Okay. Since we're talking about tax questions, some stores, and I won't mention names, have 2 taxes on their receipt. And the way it's been explained is that one is for food and one is for non-food, because one is lower than the other. So in answering questions for customers, they've been referred to representatives. So are y'all able to answer that question on why there's a split tax and why isn't it lowered for food?
The current status is that food, particular food items, should have that the first reduction that was set. And then we're asking for the final reduction of complete food tax. But items that are not particularly food still be taxed at the full rate. For example, you go out and you buy plasticware or beer. It's not considered a food consumption item. So they can show that. You also have city taxes. The state tax on food is different. And I will tell you, the city of Leavenworth specifically requested me not to impose that on cities. City of Leavenworth has the problem, the fort, the prison. There is so much of the land in Leavenworth County that is not taxable by the county as personal property tax, that they rely on certain city taxes. So some of those things that are still on your food bill relate to the local cities. And your city, and I don't know Bonner specifically, but I'll bet they have to have some kind of tax level that has to stay on for them for their city budget. That's the best I can help on that.
Okay. So if a customer was to ask, could they contact you if they had questions regarding the split tax, because I know that, city, like you explained, city and state are different. But if you're in the same area and your tax is different from the store down the street, that's a question that, some people ask. So was that something that you might be able to help someone with?
I absolutely would be glad to talk and check with it. I will guarantee you right now, the Department of Revenue probably is not enforcing it correctly, just because it is so new.
Okay.
In it, those computers that they set up or the formulas. I mean, if you drive over the line for Bonner Springs here, go to one store over there, if you go over to, say, the Casey's on State Avenue outside your city limits, it's gonna be different. This KCK is gonna be higher, just a little bit with their city stuff, so. I'd be more than glad to, check on.
Okay.
And for me, this is an interesting question. I don't sit on tax, but I would like, I'd be more than willing to figure out who would know the answer and get to the right resource to ensure that is explained in the detail to what is best supportive for the person who's asking that question. So I didn't have a problem looking at that answer or having that question answered. Unfortunately, I don't have any personal experience with that, and that hasn't been a question from my constituents. So I can speak from a high level, but this very detailed level, I'd have to get the phone a friend. So.
Okay, with Kansas facing a shortage of agricultural labor, where do you stand on the current conversations about immigration?
First off, I support our legislation, our national sovereignty. I would like to see that people come over, they are vetted properly, and that they are checked to make sure that they are not someone who is coming in to cause problems. I spoke with law enforcement officials who are close friends down in Texas this week as we looked at that the bill to support Texas. They're in crisis in Texas. And it's because they're not checking people. And that's also issues in terms of illness. Now, as far as labor for agriculture, we clearly need that work. But they should be vetted. They should come through the legal status. Everyone in my family who's come up from Mexico did it the way that you're supposed to do. And I supported them that. I don't know that it is going to be a quick fix. We did it during World War II. Clearly there were programs that were put into place to bring in laborers. I don't know that that's going to happen right now, given the current national system.
I would support refugees and immigration to help with the workforce environment, especially in agriculture. I mean, across all workforce issues that we have. But I will never support inhumane treatment of human beings who are just trying to get to a better life and have no other options or resources.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and this will be the last question. Last year, HB 2430 sought to criminalize homelessness and punish municipalities that do not comply. It did not pass. The question is, do you support permanent supportive housing or making homelessness a crime?
Can I yell aloud? No! We're not going to criminalize it. I was very disappointed last year because the hearing that came up was a sneak attack. I wasn't even aware the bill was going to be heard that day. And I walked to the door and there was a ton of people, especially Wyandotte County area, Wichita people, Topeka people. What's going on today? And then I heard the bill and I spoke against it that day. I told them I would not support it and they kind of set it down. And as a result of that, I got put on the homeless committee, the special homeless committee. I will try to be careful that I don't volunteer strongly. I had asked that Representative Orpeza be placed on the homeless committee. They did not do that. I'm sorry, because she has a very good perspective over in the Argentine area. The homeless, 30% of all homeless are mentally ill. They are not thinking right. The solution for those 30% is beds in hospitals with proper treatment, period. Instead, we criminalize them. We stick them in a county jail or a city jail for a few days. We try to give them a little bit of treatment, and then we just turn them right back out. We're not fixing the problem. That's 30% of the homeless issue. We got to deal with the mental health issue first. So I'm very strong on that. Building is not just a solution, but it is one small solution. We've heard from Lawrence and Topeka building these small little, what do they call them? Building them out of not scrapping. Anyway, they're working very hard. But again, it requires focused efforts. Topeka, Lawrence, Kansas City, Kansas. Trust me, they are working. It's going to come up. I was told it's coming up again. I will oppose that 100%. We have social organizations in Wyandotte County that are designed to do the job. And right now we're getting an overload from Kansas City, Missouri. The police can bring them over and send them over the bridge. And I don't like that. I've been told it's going to be a hearing in the next 2 weeks. So keep your ears open.
And I agree with Representative Johnson on this. Homelessness is, there's a multifactorial. So definitely addressing those issues, mental health, addiction, those diseases that perpetuate homelessness is definitely something, and criminalizing a disease is not right and should not be right and should not be accepted regardless of what state you live in. In addition to that, I wanted to, when Representative Johnson said sneak attack, I want everybody to be very aware and informed. The Chiefs will win this Sunday. So the Chiefs will win this Sunday. And there have been some very strategic bills placed for hearings on Wednesday when the parade is. So being informed is very important. Looking at what they're hearing on Wednesday in all the committees. Everybody should keep their eyes open because there are always sneak attacks coming on every level and every way. So please take some time to look at our legislative website and see what's going to be heard on Wednesday. I'm going to be there. Everybody's going to be there.
So thank you, Teresa, for moderating, and thank you to the legislators for making time to share their perspectives with us. And thank you all for joining us today and engaging in conversation. The League and the library will be posting a recording of this coffee on YouTube. Please share them with your network of voters. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.